3 years, 3 months, and 13 days ago, I almost died. At the time, I was 13 years old in year 8, and I was passionate about one thing: swimming. I was a nationally ranked swimmer, swimming 6 times a week for 3 hours a day in a professional club. It's safe to say that swimming was my life. And so, as any swimmer would do, I challenged my friend to see who could swim the furthest without breathing. And so, I dove in. 30 seconds. 60 seconds. My lungs were burning, but I felt confident. After all, I had done this many, many times before. As I pushed further, my lungs began burning more and more. But I was determined. I wanted to go the furthest I had ever gone. Until, suddenly, everything went to black. The next moment, I woke up with a lifeguard standing over me and my friends in a panic. I had experienced a shallow water blackout and had almost drowned in the pool that I had swam in for years. Over the next few days, I slowly recovered, and as I did, a frightening thought had hit me. What almost killed me was something that I hadn't even thought about: my breath. As a swimmer, the possibility of drowning was never even in my mind. However, it is what was between me being here today and my life ending that day. And so, that began a journey I would like to take you all on today. A journey about the hidden risks in life. They seem to not matter until they do. I would like to begin with the risks that we ignore inside of our own lives. Let's start with sleep. As a student, I used to treat sleep as something quite optional. I thought it was something that I could sacrifice for an extra hour of studying or even scrolling on my phone. However, I couldn't be more wrong. Although I felt fine on the outside and I felt that I could function normally, it is what was building up underneath that was dangerous. A persistent lack of sleep can cause your long-term cortisol levels to rise. And although short-term cortisol levels can be beneficial sometimes, long-term cortisol rises can be detrimental. They contribute to many negative factors, such as weight gain, long-term anxiety, stress, depression, and many, many other factors that people don't even consider and relate to sleep. The next factor within our lives that we don't consider is our mental health. Again, like many people, I used to always say that I was fine and that everything was great, when underneath I was secretly feeling overwhelmed. And many people do this. It's not abnormal for people to do this either. It's in our human behavior, which I'll touch upon later. But mental health doesn't seem important at first, but over the long term, it can have detrimental impacts. A persistent feeling of being overwhelmed can cause you to go into long-term depression, and it can lead to breakouts and many other things even worse. And so, sleep and mental health. These two things are really crucial to our lives, but we ignore them. We as humans put them aside until they have detrimental impacts. Outside of our own lives, hidden risks are everywhere in our world. Let's consider the 2008 financial crisis. The 2008 financial crisis is a prominent example of how hidden risks can turn our world upside down. Before the crisis, banks and institutions were experiencing a booming housing market. Housing prices were going up, and for lack of a better word, people were making money. And so, they were confident. They thought just because housing prices went up before, they would keep on going up in the future. However, it is what was in the shadows that was dangerous. Over time, some investors warned that the housing market was built on shaky loans, something called subprime mortgages, and that soon the housing market would collapse. Banks and institutions completely ignored this, and we know how this turned out. $17 trillion was evaporated from US household wealth, and the effects were seen all around the world. That is just one of the many examples of hidden risks in our world. However, if these hidden risks are so prominent, and if, in hindsight, they seem quite obvious, why do we as humans ignore them? Well, it all comes down to one very important thing: our irrational behavior as humans. As humans, we have two parts to our brain: the rational brain and the irrational brain. The rational brain is why we as humans have succeeded over many other animal species. However, the irrational brain is because of our inherent animalistic nature, and it is what causes us to not see the hidden risks. The first reason why our irrational behavior doesn't cause us to see hidden risks is normalcy bias. Normalcy bias is essentially assuming that since everything was going well before, it would continue going well in the future. The same thing we saw in the 2008 financial crisis. Normalcy bias is something that we use to comfort our brains. It's something that we use to tell ourselves that everything is fine, to avoid the pain of us feeling the stress that would come with the possibility of our world turning upside down. Another reason why we don't see hidden risks is overconfidence. As humans, we are inherently overconfident creatures. There's a famous statistic. 73% of people think that they're better than average drivers. I think you all know if you look on the road, that simply isn't true. However, genuinely, many people actually believe that they are better than average drivers. This is called the better than average effect. And while it may be harmless in terms of driving ego, it can be detrimental in terms of risk. The better than average effect is what makes a CEO assume that their company is too big to fail. A bank assume that a crisis is never coming. And a swimmer like me assume that I could never drown. And it is what makes us ignore the hidden risks in life. These are just two of the many biases and inherent human traits that we have that make us ignore risk. Other traits, like confirmation bias, the ostrich effect, all of these things contribute to why we don't see the risks in our lives. However, if, as humans, we are such irrational creatures, is there any way to actually combat this? Is there any way to actually anticipate and mitigate these risks within our lives? Well, you'll all be happy to know that you all are doing the first step right now. The first step to seeing the hidden risks in our lives is to understand that we as humans are irrational creatures and that we usually don't see these hidden risks. The second step is building systems in our lives to combat these risks. I call these systems lifeguards. Like in a pool, a lifeguard is always watching, always making sure to see the things that you don't. In our lives, we need lifeguards. Whether it's your friends, your family, teachers, mentors, doctors, peers, anyone in your life can be your lifeguard. Lifeguards are people that observe and see the things that you don't. For example, a friend can see that you might be feeling stressed or overwhelmed, or a family member can see that you are suffering from various mental health issues before you even do. These people are important, yeah, I say crucial to our lives, because these are the people that can help us understand and us see the hidden risks. And so, these people are the people that we need in our lives. We need people that we can open up to. We need people that can see the hidden risks before we do. And so, I would like to end you all with one question. What do we pretend doesn't matter until it does? Because that question could very well save your lives. For me, I was lucky. I had a friend watching over me. For many people, they won't be as lucky. And so, we need to think about how we can prevent this. We can't stop all risks. And even if we could, life wouldn't be fun without risks. However, spotting the risks that can be crucial and can be detrimental to our future is important and could be the thing between us sinking or swimming in our daily lives. Thank you.
Thank you.